Hey guys, Dougfield bringing you a news flash with the highlights from the Seamasters Cup on the 7th of April 2013. This one was a really interesting night, starting off with a very slow passive game from these first two players. It was Docs up against Locht, and what started out with some cannon cheese coming out of Locht unfortunately led him to have a very troublesome mid-game, leading into a, well, pretty much, as we said, a very passive game, leading to the late game, where Docs was able to bring out his Collector's Edition Ultralisks here with their fancy skins, their glowing skins, their big horns, and they were able to chomp through the buildings of Locht inside the main, as we can see here, dropping in around about, I think it was about 12 or 13 Ultralisks inside the main. Locht unable to keep up, but despite the Void Rays coming out, they could not do the damage that was needed to compete with all of those big boys. And then we moved into the next set, featuring Frenetic Array's Fenner up against RV Liver. Game number one was actually a very quick game with a quick pull coming out on around about 10 supply, and then a drone pull along with a couple of spines being built by Liver inside the main base of Fenner, but then Fenner was not able to hold up against that, leading into game number two here on Daybreak, where we got to see Fenner exercising his macro power, building up a third base, getting a whole bunch of Mutalisks out, and with a little bit of a quicker Spire coming out of Fenner and slightly quicker upgrades, we got to see him just start to take control of the game. Of course, you know, as you would expect in a Zerg versus Zerg, things leading to a big Muta versus Muta matchup, and as we can see here, Fenner was able to take game number two
right now, and the Muta battles, you know.
And game number three took us back to Akalon Wastes here, with Liver deciding that this was his map, and he was able to get quite a lot of damage done with a relatively early passive game between these two players. We saw that Fenner was holding off his opponent. He did again have the Muta control up in the sky, but Liver was able to get some banelings through, and after an attempt to try and lock down some of that drone line inside the natural base, Fenner was able to hold it together, keep most of his drones alive, and of course keep that big cloud of Mutas up in the sky up and running, with around about 16, a lead of almost 10 Mutas on his opponent. And after some back and forth battles with some lings on the ground, Fenner was able to take the series 2-1. The next set saw Fenner up again. He was up against a Terran, this time in Kaiser. Kaiser, both these players are actually starting a very, very passive style here on Belshir Vestige. We saw some Mines, we saw some Marines, we saw some Hellions as well, but Fenner was up at 180 supply while Kaiser was down at 90, and with a whole bunch of Banelings rolling through the third base, completely destroying any chance that Kaiser had at picking up a third base. Kaiser was easily able, Fenner was easily able to take down his opponent here with just a flood of units into the natural base. And game number two, again, Kaiser coming out with a little bit of a different style this time, actually going for a very quick starport with a reactor, picking up 2 early medevacs, but Fenner, not having any of that, picked up a whole bunch of roaches off 2 bases and just marched them into his opponent's main base. And with, well, basically just pretty much undefended natural and main base, Fenner was able to take a victory here and win this set 2-9.
Of course, we can see that Fenner is going to lose some of his drones here, but the big problem is...
The next set saw Team Immunity's T-Gun up against Steelheart. Game number one was on Whirlwind. We got to see Steelheart pulling out a very quick pull. I believe it was on 10, and coming across to try and get some damage done on T-Gun. But T-Gun's wonderful micro kept pretty much most of his drones alive. He did lose his early hatchery and almost lost a queen. That queen you can see there in the main was sitting on about 2 health for the majority of the early part of that game there. And after a quick win, we moved into game number two, which was on Daybreak, seeing T-Gun up against Steelheart again. And, well, after, you know, a relatively standard sort of game number one where we saw that early pull, T-Gun decided it was time to pull out the Nidus Worm and was able to Nidus into his opponent's third base and was able to bring out a whole bunch of roaches, some queens. They had wonderful upgrades as well. I think they were sitting on 1-1, so they had a Carapace upgrade up on his opponent. And despite the best intentions of Steelheart to try and bring his units out to defend against this push, it was just way too much.
10 roaches on the way, plus 2 to Carapace now finishing up as well. And speaking of upgrades, the upgrades of these Hydras is at 1-1, so they're just a little bit behind right now. Drones coming out, and that is the end of Steelheart.
And in the next set, we got to see, this was the preliminary finals, I believe, between Rossi and King Kong from XG King. The NV Terran starting out with a pretty greedy style here, picking up a very quick natural and third command centers after one singular Reaper that unfortunately got picked off by King Kong just by his drones. And after these early links came across, he got inside, took down the reactor. Rossi unable to get up the double Hellions, which you would normally want at this point, and after these two lings got in, their speed had finished up, Rossi was in a bad position, and I was a little bit speechless. Eesh. Yeah, well, game number 2 started out a little bit better for Rossi, getting out his macro up to scratch and was able to continually harass King Kong, taking down his third base multiple times, taking his fourth base multiple times, able to get his own 4 bases up and running. And with the Widowmine, Marauder, and Marine style that we commonly see out of Terrans these days in this particular matchup, he was able to roll through King Kong in game number 2, taking a pretty easy victory. I don't want to say it was a complete smash or anything like that, but Rossi certainly had King Kong's number in game number 2. Game number 3 saw the move to Neo Planet S, of course, one of the really quality maps in this particular current ladder season. King Kong thought it was a pretty good map as well. He was able to pick up a quick 3 and then 4 bases off the back of a Mutiling Bane play. Rossi trying to hold together with a whole bunch of Marines and Mines, as you would normally see in this matchup, as we said before, and despite his best intentions, unfortunately, Rossi was not able to keep up with King Kong. Despite the drops, King Kong was able to take the gold bases in the middle, he took the bases in the corners of the map, and started to really power up with Ultra, Ling, and Bane, and of course a couple of mutas up in the sky, able to roll through Rossi in this set 2-1.
Comes out, which of course isn't perhaps the best way to deal with all of this, but it is just the last line of defense that Rossi has right now. He's trying to get out some more Marines and Marauders, but it is just not going to be enough. King Kong just 1-Aing all of these lings across the map. He's just going to rally them across into his opponent's natural. You can see the lines of the rally there, and I would say that is going to be it. So game number 3 goes the way of King Kong, and that...
In the next set, we got to see Frustration taking on King Kong. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get the all of the highlights from this particular set, but either way, game number 1 was an interesting one. We saw Frustration going up with a very standard sort of expansion here, attempting to cannon rush his opponent at the natural base, and King Kong had none of it. Got rid of the cannons, got up to a third base, and even a fourth up a little bit later on in the game, and just decided it's Hydralist time. It just marched his Hydras across the map. Frustration with a very quick Stargate and trying to get some Stargate tech out, had his Colossi way behind and was not able to keep up in that particular match. We then got to see, we also got to see one of my favorite games in the semi-final here. It was between King Kong and Flash Blisk. Starting out on Newkirk Precinct, we got to see these two players battle back and forth in what was an amazing game, which consisted of a lot of mutas starting out for King Kong. We saw a DT play from Blisk, as we just saw there inside the natural. He was able to get some DTs inside that base. Was able to clean up some of the, after it was actually a failed DT start to the game, but then he was able to continue to harass with some of the DTs, taking out a Spire, taking out a whole bunch of drones, and King Kong was, well, he looked to be struggling at one point, and then the game actually went for quite a long time. We almost had, we had like 5 bases for each player at one point, and I think King Kong even got up to 6 base, and just with continual harassment. If you've got to see Fantasy versus True in the GSL last night in Code S, just the continual harassment between both players was the type of thing that we got to see in this match, and I am going to cast this one just again as a solo sort of thing on the channel, so make sure you keep an eye out for that, because it was a wonderful game. Unfortunately, we did have a few interruptions, and towards the end, myself and Claymores and Flamga, who were casting this particular series, got interrupted by an internet superhero who was able to click a couple of buttons, but as I said, I'll cast this again so you guys can see the entire match. But as we can see here, King Kong Kong picked up a ridiculous amount of mutas, and despite some pushes that went through from Blisk trying to attack into his opponent's natural, he took out the natural and the main, took out all the tech, also took out this third base here. King Kong was able to hold everything together somehow, and he was able to keep it all together, leading to Blisk falling down in game number 1, which led to game number 2 in this best of 3, which was an interesting one. King Kong deciding that it was time for a Baneling bust, throwing up a whole bunch of Banes there. Looks like, as we can see, Blisk was able to hold together with a force field down at the natural base. You could actually say this could have been the fact that his wall was a little bit different to what you would normally see. A lot of the times you would see Protoss players put a pylon as part of that wall at the front, but Blisk actually had it at the back, as you can see just to the right hand side there. So it was a really interesting play from him. King Kong, after the first bust had failed, continued to try and bust through this big wall that had been set up by Blisk, but unfortunately it was just not enough. I think he would have, and of course they continue to sprout out of the hatchery, so he will try and push through again. The Zealot just in the right spot there to help defend this attack, and it looks like he will be able to push through. The Banes again blocked out, wonderfully done by Blisk, and a GG from King Kong. So game number 3 took the 2 players on to Whirlwind, of course a very Zergy map, and Blisk had to deal with that very frustrating style that does come about from time to time from high-level Zerg players. It is the Swarm Host Hydra Queen play that came out from the ex-OGS Zerg player. He decided that it was time to bring out this little annoying little thing, and with some, right at the start, it looked as if Blisk was actually going to hold things together. He got a couple of Colossi out, he had double Stargates bringing out Void Rays, and it initially was looking very good for the Protoss player from Flash, but unfortunately he was not able to keep everything together for the entire time. King Kong, with some excellent macro, was able to pick up a 4th and even a 5th base, and towards the end, with some Corruptors coming out to deal with those Colossus and the Void Rays, he was not able to, Blisk was just not able to keep up, and King Kong took the victory, which took us into the final match, a Zerg versus Zerg matchup between Mafia from IM and King Kong from XG King. Game number 1 started out with quite a quick pull coming out from Mafia. Of course, it looks, you know, we got to see a very interesting style where we got to see this just wonderful micro from Mafia, just attacking his opponent's very quick hatchery. But inside the main base, King Kong was able to get his gas up, and that is a very key part of this particular match, because despite the very heavy damage that was done here by Mafia, we actually saw King Kong bring it all back shortly afterwards, because despite the hatch almost dying, we saw around about 5 or 6 drones dying very quickly here from King Kong. Mafia back at home had to get his economy rolling, and as we can see here, King Kong with his speed quickly on the way, and despite being down in the drone count inside the main, he was able to flood his opponent's main base with Lings, and eventually some Banes would have come through, but it was all just a little bit too much for Mafia there in game number 1. Completed time, and Mafia may lose this game right here, right now. The link count of Mafia is currently sitting at 4, and they... Game number 2 saw the players fighting out on Cloud Kingdom, of course a very popular map, but not seen as much anymore given that it's out of the ladder pool. And the 2 players, well, it started off very simply, both players going up to very quick expansions, getting a 3rd as well, but Mafia had the number of the mutas there. He was up a huge difference in the construction of the Spire, and as we can see here, Mafia with a 3rd base up and running, gas coming in from that one as well, was able to just continually crank out the mutas and was able to take advantage in the sky, leading to the victory in this game. For him, Mafia now up at a total of 125. So game number 3 saw them go over to Belshia Vestige in this best of 5, and King Kong was able to really assert his dominance in this game, and in fact the Banelings came across doing a whole heap of damage inside the main base there. Mafia unable to keep up, and despite that loss, Mafia stayed in for a while and was able to try and control things, picking up his 3rd base, but the harassment from King Kong just kept coming. Lings at the 3rd, mutas in the main, and that was basically it for the IM Zerg player. The end of it certainly is.
Game number 3 goes the way of King.
And game number 5 was on the Fabled Daybreak. Game number 4, sorry, was on the Fabled Daybreak. Mafia deciding to go in for a very, very heavy attack right at the start off. 2 bases, picked up a whole bunch of banelings, a whole bunch of lings as well, and just continually pressured his opponent, trying to bust in here. King Kong with the extra gas down at the natural was able to start up his lair very quickly, and despite what looked to be a game that was definitely going to go the way of Mafia, King Kong somehow held it all together and was able to keep his drone count up high after some good splits inside the natural here, as we can see some of the drones going down there, but still, regardless, there were some pretty damn good splits. Mafia, well, he had a little bit of trouble, and as we can see here from the last few minutes of the game, it started to turn around.
Going to take us to a 2-2, I think, because his link count, well, it's continuing to grow, and, you know, maybe, well, I don't know. I don't think Mafia is going to be too happy if he loses from this position, but he is looking quite good. Is that... Are you linking that shit in my chat, Jamie? I'm gonna fucking ban you in a minute if you do that. We've got the Lings and Banes continuing to battle out the front. Mafia trying to get a few more of his own up and running, but he is actually forced back for the time being. Excellent baneling control by King Kong, able to keep his opponent out of the natural, at least for the time being. But the banelings will continue to try and come through. Mafia is so committed to this attack. He's got 20 Lings now on the way, getting a third gas, trying to make sure that he... sorry, a second gas, trying to make sure that he can actually bring in the pain. Looks like the drone count currently whoa, big hits there by King Kong. Looks like the drone count currently sitting at 29 to 26, so King Kong has been keeping himself in it for the moment, but King Kong's economy is starting to really look good. 35 drones out for him right now. Mafia stuck at 26. He's in this position where he's just about to say, you know what, to hell with you. I am doing so much damage, and 6 banelings go down to the 2 of King Kong, and I think that King Kong is about to salvage this from what looked like a very difficult position for the XG King player. I think he is about to bring it all back because Mafia is starting to fall down. The Lings up still continuing to come across, and he's just not really bothering at, you know, trying to look towards any sort of higher tech or anything like this. The drone count still at 26, and this may be the last attack. 20 Lings about to pop out, 10 Banes have just popped out for Mafia. Here we go, it looks as if the final attack is about to commence. Drones coming through, Lings coming through, trying to get some damage done. Banes coming across, get blasted apart by the Spine Crawlers and the Banes on the ramp. Looks like XG King's King Kong is going to stick around for a little bit longer. I tell you what, he's got Banes prepared, he's got the drone still alive. Will Mafia be able to get inside? Yes, he will. And with the Lings inside, he's able to get some free hits, but the Mutas are probably next on the menu here, and we'll see. And that is it. Yep, that is definitely it. Mafia gets inside, but the Mutas are now coming out. 6 Mutas. Mafia trying to get some banelings out, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it. They're off to the side, and the Queens can see where they are. That is going to be it. He's going to try and get in with those Banes, gets a couple of them inside the line, but it is not going to be enough. More Banes at the front here from Mafia. Still continuing to harass. The Mutas are now out. We've got at least 5 of them out. Yep, 5 are already out. Another one just popped out as well. And despite losing a few of those drones inside of his mineral lines, Mafia is forced to GG. So, grand final goes the way of King Kong. Very nicely done.
Thank you all for tuning in for the News Flash. I'm going to be doing these from time to time, featuring just either updates about things going on in the scene, previews of upcoming tournaments and events and these kinds of things, and predictions as well. And of course, anytime I'm going to be doing live casting, I am going to be doing these kinds of highlight videos, just showing some of the matches that went on if you weren't able to tune in, or in fact if you were playing as well. I am sorry for the quality in this particular cast. It was a little bit sketchy, but that's because it was sort of a ad hoc thing that I decided to put this kind of video together. So next time I'm going to be just directly recording the video content to my computer so that it's much higher quality, and I'm going to make sure that the resolution, as you can see here, now there's no boxes on the sides, no black lines on the edges, but I am going to make sure that's fixed up for next time too. So please be sure to share these kinds of videos with your friends as well, because obviously I want to try and get some more people catching up with things that have happened lately and some of the live casts that I have been doing. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time.